Well, hello again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's BU Alumni Career Webinar, Navigating Your Career Transition, Key Success Factors. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm a member of the Alumni Career Engagement Team from the BU Alumni Association. Today's webinar is offered to our 389,000 alumni around the globe, and of course, all of our current students. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Some of you from some places that are very far away from our Boston campuses. Thanks for being here. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals, and we aim to do this by providing everybody with access to a series of valuable programs, tools, and communities. In addition to this webinar series, one of our most exciting resources is a free online community called BU Connects. If you haven't already signed up for BU Connects, I hope you'll take just 5 minutes after this presentation to log in and complete your profile at buconnects.com. We have over 34,000 BU alumni and students already on the BU Connects platform, and it is the very best place to build your professional network with other terriers, join regional and special interest groups. You can become a mentor, find a mentor, or hopefully do both. Before I introduce today's speaker, just a couple housekeeping notes from me. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni and Friends website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions that you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation. Similar to the chat on Zoom, you also have a Q&A function where at any time you just click on Q&A, put your question in, and we're going to definitely try to save some time to get to as many questions as we can. I'll also, of course, keep an eye on the chat for any of you that are more comfortable using that. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, BU School of Public Health alum Emily Raviola. Emily is a career and executive coach with Blue Bridge Career Coaching, founded in 2010 to guide job seekers and career changers. Based in Boston, Emily's built a 20-year career in higher education, nonprofit fundraising, and healthcare administration before becoming a career coach. In addition to her work with individual clients, each month Emily gives a 4-session Tools for Transition workshop series to job seekers and career changers. She earned an undergraduate degree in psychology, her master's in public health from BU, and also an MBA from the Boston College Carroll School of Management. Emily is a certified professional co-active coach, a member of the International Coaching Federation of Professional Coaches, and also a member and fellow at the Institute of Coaching at McLean Hospital, the Harvard Medical School affiliate. Emily, thank you so much for being here today. We are really excited to have you sharing some of your expertise with the community. So I'm going to take care of changing your slides. Just let me know when you want to do that. And the floor
Sounds
is all
great,
yours.
Jeff. Thank you so much, Jeff, and welcome everyone. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak with you all today. Let me start with a metaphor. We see any job search or career pivot as a journey, sometimes a fairly long journey across a bridge. The wind might be blowing, it can be a little disorienting, and you really cannot see where you're going to land on the other side. So you're really in transit, lots of uncertainty. You may feel a little bit like you've lost the ground under your feet. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through 5 of 10 key success factors to help accelerate your speed across this bridge of transition. So my goal is to provide you with a multitude of tools, very specific tools, that will speed or accelerate your journey across this bridge of transition. And of course, this is in your best interest. The faster you get to your next desired job, the happier you'll be, the happier those closest to you will be as well. So I want to start with an orienting concept for you. You've probably heard the phrase, make the plan, work the plan. So our 10 key success factors are very much oriented towards the making the plan and sticking to the plan. So think under that umbrella. Here, Jeff has pulled up a picture of another bridge. And what I like about this bridge is you can see underneath its very enormous foundational structure. And so when we think about the bridge of transition, this foundational structure is twofold. It is made or comprised of your existing personal and professional network and who you are. So first foundational piece, let's just talk about who you are. That is where we're going to spend most of today's presentation. Hopefully Jeff will invite me back and we can talk about your network and how to think about and approach that kind of piece of the puzzle. Who you are includes your determination, your work ethic, your curiosity, your willingness to really grab the reins and go for it, your endurance, staying and working the plan, sticking with it. These career and life transitions really require introspection, resilience, because you have to face uncertainty and navigate and adapt to change, and really sometimes and often reevaluate what matters to you. So as you undergo the process of going across the bridge of transition, you really grow as a person. And we at Blue Bridge think that you become a better person. The sense of who you are is an absolutely crucial part of the foundation of the bridge. The second piece of the bridge, which I'm going to introduce but not go into much depth on due to the constraints of our time together today. The second piece is your personal and professional network and all the people they know. So I first want to introduce you to the concept of weak ties. Everybody knows on LinkedIn that you have first degree connections. Those are strong ties. Second, third degree connections, those are weak ties. There was a sociologist, Mark Granovetter, who is a Stanford researcher interested in social networks. That was where, the focus of his research. And he conducted a study of hundreds of, at the time, men seeking employment. And what he found is that there's a potency of weak ties. Now, in his research, he was interested in social equality, but basically he found there was a tremendous amount of mobility, career mobility, for the individuals who reached further out into their network. So think of those second and third degree connections on LinkedIn. So there's a potency of weak ties. This line of inquiry has been continued. Another study by researchers across Harvard, MIT, and Stanford actually they analyzed 20 million LinkedIn users and found that those who connected with more distant ties, those weak ties, also reiterated that it created more job mobility. So we really want you to drastically expand your network. I'm not going to say much more about that, but I do want to make one more point. Here, you all have done so well to even show up. We at Blue Bridge call alumni a golden key. So the fact that you're here at this BU Connects offering is a fantastic, fantastic step. Kudos to you all. I personally make it a point to really stay active in all the schools I've attended. It's a great way to give back and a great way to stay connected with those communities. And basically, it's going to really broaden those broader ties, that bigger social network that you need to get access to information and resources that will point you in the direction of a great new position. So remember, like a bridge needs a solid foundation to stand, your career transition requires both an understanding of who you are and a robust network to propel you forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's what's on the docket today. We're going to go through 5 of our 10 key success factors in career searches or career transitions. In terms of the 2 elements that are the foundational piece of the bridge, we're focusing on the who you are piece of it. So making any career transition really starts with reflection. taking the time to identify what truly excites you, what you love to learn about, what matters most to you in work and life, you really cannot skip this step. Then you need to bring reality into the room. You develop a strategy that aligns your skills and interests with what is actually in demand in the economy. And that is the economy in the state, in the city where you live. That's where research and adaptability come in, and I'll talk a little bit about that. As you explore new opportunities, the way you connect with other people makes a huge difference. So I'm going to talk about fun and flattering questions and how this approach helps build relationships and opens doors. And of course, putting yourself out there really requires confidence. So I want to talk through thinking about how to develop an even more positive attitude and to project that in the world so you stay resilient and approachable. And lastly, the last step we'll cover today is crafting and sharing a personal narrative. So you can communicate clearly what you're exploring, why it excites you, where you're hoping to go, and then hopefully get others to help you and support your journey. So one more thing, as we look towards the other key success factors that I will not be going into in detail, I just wanted to talk about how they focus on expanding your network, conducting informational interviews that open doors, finding a way to be where you want to work so that you can become visible to the employers of interest, and then leveraging referrals to get into interview pools. These strategies are also key to accelerating your job search. Next slide, please. Great. So let's focus on the first key success factor, which is career reflection and discernment. This, again, is not something you can step over or skip over. It's essential because this will shape and define your path moving forward. This piece will help you be able to articulate where you are going. So when people love their work, it turns out they actually are more resilient in terms of colds, viral illnesses. They get those at half the rate of people who are suffering in their jobs and don't like their jobs. People who love their work also tap into greater resources in terms of creativity. You can think of something when you are at work and you really are engaged in what you're doing, the sense of meaning that accompanies that. So when you love your job, everything seems more meaningful. You also draw on your natural strengths. And so this phase, this career reflection piece, is focused on identifying those strengths and identifying your own personal values, what really matters to you. Next slide, please. Okay, so at Bluebridge, we begin this reflection process with several career assessments, and I'm happy to share them, just happy to send them along to you. So I'll share my email at the end, and I can forward those along to anyone who's interested. You just email me. One of our career assessments is called the 3 stories exercise. And this has the client really reflect on moments in their life where they felt particularly fulfilled, happy, proud. And when looking back at these experiences, it helps people uncover really valuable insights. So to bring this down to earth, let me tell you a case study. One of our clients, I've anonymized to protect his privacy, but one of our clients had a 10-year career in marketing in the real estate sector. And he built a very strong foundation. His name is James. He built a strong foundation in marketing data analysis. He had a natural talent for math, and he was rising through the ranks within his company. However, he felt there was something, and he couldn't quite pinpoint it, but there was something that was missing for him. in terms of fulfillment, he was not experiencing the level he wanted to. So he came for coaching and he took our assessments and discovered that in addition to his analytical side, he had a deep love for visuals, including films, photography, all the creative arts. So very creative person. This had been really, these pieces of his interests had been more in the realm of hobbies. But because of the assessment, what he did is he discovered that he could use his visual spatial strengths in the commercial real estate industry by working on drone videos, so drone photography and video making. So he basically became an expert in using drones to capture high quality aerial footage for property listings, and really revolutionized the way that his real estate firm was marketing properties. And that really helped him support his firm in moving away from competitors. In our last conversation, James was really happy where he was working, but also sort of thinking, maybe I will branch out on my own and really make a go of creating a niche business that combines technical skills with his creative passion and use of drones. This story highlights the importance of slowing down and really taking time to reflect on who you are, what you really enjoy, and your natural talents and inclinations. So give yourself that space and time to reflect, and notice what you love to talk about with other people. Sometimes it's easier for other people to see our strengths. So ask your loved ones to give you feedback and help you think creatively about your next steps. So often, especially earlier in our careers, we take our favorite skills for granted. They come to us naturally, and that is really why sometimes you can call on people and they say, oh yes, that visuospatial ability, you've had it since birth. It makes so much sense that you pull that into your career. One more thing before we move to the next slide. You see here, there's a quote: pain plus reflection is a sign of progress. It is not always straightforward on the career journeys. When there's a transition going on, there's often bumps in the road. And so what you can do is focus on what you are learning, focus on the power of disconfirming information. We need to explore, we need to experiment, we need to iterate and learn. And often learning what we don't like, what we don't want to do, is a key part of the reflection that you need to move in a way that aligns better with who you are. Next slide, please. Okay, very basic slide here. You could almost skip it, but it's so important. The right path depends on who you are, not your kids, partner, college classmates, colleagues, not even our American culture. Dig deep to think about what could be a good fit for you. Sometimes we need to act like gardeners and go to our garden and weed out all the voices of everybody else so that we can actually hear our own voices. So don't forget to do that weeding. That's an important step. Next slide, please. This is the first in a series of my favorite genre of cartoons, the HR cartoon. And here you see this officious HR kitty cat with her perfect family in this family portrait, her perfect little paws on the desk, clean desk. And then you have this little doggy, looks like a deer in headlights, and everyone, all the other employees looking on, wanting to know what's going on. Again, take the time to see where you fit well. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're on to the key success factor number 2, which is bringing reality into the picture. We want to help you develop a strategy that maps to the current economic landscape. Now that you've ideally identified through the reflection and discernment process the field and the function, or if you're exploring, you can look into multiple fields, multiple functions. It's time to develop a strategy. So your strategy will be 100% driven by your unique context, which can be divided into two parts. There are the external factors. These are outside of your control. The economy, industry growth, job availability, even your location. Sometimes you don't have the ability to move. And then you have your personal circumstances and constraints. These are the aspects of your life that sometimes you can change, but others you can't. Maybe you have to care for an elderly relative, or maybe you have young children you can't pick up and move. There's so many examples of personal circumstances and constraints, and you really need to factor those in. Next slide, please. Great. So let's start with the external factors. Understanding the economic landscape is crucial. You'll want to direct your focus towards growing industries and occupations, not those in decline. This means delving into reliable sources. For example, like business sections of major newspapers. Please skip social media chatter unless you're going to reputable outlets like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, if your whatever your local paper is. So for me, I read the Boston Business Journal. These sources provide valuable insights on which sectors are thriving and which ones are not. Another great source of information is the Department of Labor. Through its Bureau of Labor Statistics, you will really get a treat if you check this out. There's a treasure trove really of information that can help you with your career discernment process, and then also with this step of mapping yourself to the economic landscape. So since the 1950s, the Department of Labor, through its Bureau of Labor Statistics, has been collecting and documenting the occupations of Americans. When it started, they only tracked about the 200 occupations that existed at the time. Now they monitor almost 900 occupations, which really shows how complex our economy has become over time. If you've never visited the Occupational Outlook Handbook website, check it out. There is a feature that is absolutely fantastic. As a career coach, I always point people to this feature. Let's say that you're exploring becoming a data analyst, and you can look on the handbook website and determine whether that field is growing faster or slower than average. You can find average income range, the qualifications you would need to get into that field. And if you go on, you'll notice there's a little button where it says explore similar occupations. This is a great tool for folks who are still trying to discern which industries, fields, functions they might be interested in. Next slide, please. Great. So now I want you to think like like a strategist, a gangster to be specific. And I know that's a macabre analogy, but bear with me. Think about it like this. Gangsters sit around the table, smoking cigars, and figuring out where the money is flowing, where the opportunity is, where there's growth. And your job is to do exactly the same. Identify areas that are growing and look for opportunities within them. Next slide, please. So these are simply examples of fields that are currently growing. And so I'll just let you look through those on your own for just a moment. I update this slide every year, and basically there's some really interesting directions and some volatile areas. We've all seen what's happened with the stock markets and artificial intelligence this week. So lots of change in our world. Next slide, please. Okay, we've talked a bit about personal and strategic constraints. One of those is you need to know what your income floor is. And this is not about setting income goals, but about understanding what you realistically need to maintain your lifestyle. So knowing this helps you avoid pursuing opportunities that don't meet your financial requirements. Other possible constraints you may face. Maybe you want to get into policy, but you only have experience in education. Maybe you're not great with computers or AI tools. Okay, there's a range of things. Maybe you've been out of the workplace for a while. Maybe you're disorganized. That's a challenge. We talk about that a little bit in our workshop, how to get more organized. The last bullet I do want to dwell on, for people who are 50 plus, ageism is a real thing in the workforce. And we have developed some strategies to counteract the negative effects of ageism. So I'm going to share my email at the end, and you should feel free to email me if you're in this category. I'll send you a PowerPoint slide that talks through some strategies, how to sort of buffer yourself from any unintended side effects of being 50 plus. Next slide, please. Okay. Ultimately, knowing your constraints helps you avoid pursuing jobs that require skills that you don't have, or it allows you to strategically position any areas where you may be less experienced and can't immediately fix. The goal is to really understand what you need to improve or avoid so you can focus on opportunities that really align with your strengths and your circumstances. So let's say that you have a gap. Let's say that you're missing a language skill like fluency in Spanish. You're working in the field of social work. You're in Southern California, and you don't speak Spanish. Well, that's a fix that needs fixing. That is something you can remedy. So whether it's enrolling in Spanish classes or using a language app, you can identify this, and make an action plan to address this gap. And there is a sense of empowerment that comes from knowing that if you put in the work, you can get where you want to go. Next slide, please. Great. So we've covered the strategic side of job searching. We're going to pivot just to the interpersonal side, which is just as crucial as building connections and fostering relationships. So sometimes people call these the soft skill. So the key success factor we're talking about here is asking fun and flattering questions. And why do we do this at Bluebridge? Why do we care about asking fun and flattering questions? Well, we rely on a book from the last century, early in the last century, which is quite a fantastic book, and everybody should read it if they haven't already. And if you have read it, read it again. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is a really, really strong resource for anyone in a career transition because he understands and speaks to the power of developing genuine relationships. So he emphasizes the most straightforward concepts. Smiling, using people's names builds rapport. You need people on your team in a job search. You have the power with your attention, with your relatability to pull someone onto your team. Carnegie highlights the importance of showing sincere interest in others. So really creating connections that go beyond networking, building authentic relationships. So when we go for a job interview and we're kind of stuck in our own experience, we're nervous, we might even lack awareness of the interviewer as a human being. So pay attention to other people. Maybe you're doing an informational interview. give the gift of your attention, use their name, smile, appreciate them. Be grateful for the fact that they're even engaging with you. Dale Carnegie also teaches the value of active listening and making others feel important as a way to foster trust and rapport. So these are incredibly simple approaches and can be game changers for building bridges to new opportunities. Building meaningful relationships is part of any job search. And so Steve Dalton wrote this book, The 2-Hour Job Search. He was the lead in career counseling at Duke for quite a long time. And basically, he suggests using fun and flattering questions. So we he coined that phrase during informational interviews. So again, creating a positive, engaging tone, highlighting the interviewees, in this case, because it's an informational interview, interviewees' unique experiences and successes. Build rapport, demonstrate curiosity and appreciation. Next slide, please. We're on to key success factor number 4. Okay, and this is all about developing and projecting a positive attitude. Let's first talk about why this is important, and then we'll go about talking about how we can develop it. So when it comes to career transitions, you're going to need people on your team to help you get your next job. The key is to speak about your goals in a positive and clear way that gets other people excited about supporting you. And then once they're invested, they'll want to help you, whether that's by introducing you to someone in your field or forwarding your resume to the right hiring manager. And let me just pause to say, this piece of sort of determining how best to make use of one's network to get into various companies and positions, that's a lot of what I do one-on-one with people. It has to be very, very tailored. And so that's sort of the crux of a lot of one-on-one coaching, is just that part, that strategic part of finding the right messaging to open a door. In terms of a positive attitude, you are going to, you can move to the next slide. Thank you so much. A positive attitude, it costs nothing. It's free. However, a bad attitude, a sour attitude, a negative attitude can have real costs, really affecting your success. Maybe you're showing up to an interview and you lack gratitude to the other individual in the room. Maybe you're feeling, dejected, which is an easy way to feel when you're looking for a new job. What I want to communicate here is practicing the positive attitude. And we're going to talk through that in a little more detail. Next slide. Okay, so overarching umbrella here, the big message is positivity is actually something you can learn and practice. Okay, so here we have a quote from the head of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford School of Medicine. So this was a quote right after the pandemic began. He said something that really highlights the difference between positive and negative attitudes and why it's important to practice positive thoughts. So Dr. Carrion says here, thinking positively is not something that happens automatically. In fact, automatically we think negatively. That evolutionarily is what produced results. So for instance, if you were the person, imagine back to the days when you're living in a cave, with your other people, and you're the person who thought, let me roll a boulder in front of the door so that I don't have to worry about a big predator coming in the middle of the night. That negative thinking produced results. However, as we've evolved, we have developed a negativity bias. So a negativity bias is a cognitive bias, which really evolved as a survival mechanism to help humans stay alert to potential dangers. it causes this negativity bias causes people to give more attention and weight to negative experiences. We can counteract this negativity bias by intentionally emphasizing positive experiences. So reframing, practicing gratitude, and fostering balanced perspectives. So many of us worry in the middle of the night. We worry about all sorts of things. Oh my gosh, what if it takes me a year to get a job? What if I can't get enough money? What if I can't make my mortgage payments? The list of worries can be endless. The negative thoughts, they come flying into your mind. Whereas positive thoughts, on the other hand, really do need to be learned and practiced. So let's flip the order of those last two verbs. Positive thoughts need to be learned, and then they need to be practiced. Okay, so you may be familiar with this concept, but being on the bridge of transition is a great time to work on this, and I'll tell you why. Next slide, please. So one way to immediately start framing in a positive way your job search and how to frame it positively is to shine light on how much you're learning, how exciting it is to be learning about all the employers working in your area of interest. Okay. In fact, some interesting research by the American Psychological Association showed they followed two groups of job seekers. One focused on performance goals and the other focused on learning goals. Those who focused on learning goals had a positive impact. It had a positive impact on their employment outcomes. So just focusing on that growth mindset, that learning orientation can really be, a great hack as you're on the bridge of transition. Next slide. Okay, so let's say that I'm going to give you some tools for working on positive attitudes. In my workshop, we go a lot deeper on this, but I just want to give you a couple little tidbits that you might take away and implement. So let's say you're a finalist for a job at Expedia. You don't get the job. Come up with a way to cognitively reframe something that's good about this disappointment. Of course, you're going to start by saying, that stinks. I didn't get it. I really wanted it. Then you reframe how you're interpreting. Maybe that job was perfect for me, but the company is going through rough times. Maybe I dodged a bullet. So that's an example of a reframe. It's another way you could think of it is silver lining, looking for the silver lining. It was an hour and a half commute. Maybe I can find something closer to home. Silver lining. So the second tip that we give is the spider rule. You find a spider in your environs and you either smash it or you take it outside. Regardless, you deal with it right away. How does that relate to the job search? Say that you've prepared all your materials perfectly. You're ready to submit an application for a job you're really excited about. Everything's lined up. You get you've got your message to the recruiter. You've got your perfect resume. You click submit. And then, I didn't change the salutation on the cover letter. So you could sit there. You could beat yourself up. But we would recommend the spider rule. Instead of beating yourself up, immediately try to fix the problem. Make the cover letter right. If you can upload a substitute letter, do that. Write the recruiter and say, I'm sorry, by mistake, I uploaded the wrong letter. Own your mistake and take care of it right away. You let it sit, it gets worse. I've also listed a couple references here. Yale has a great free course on Coursera, The Science of Wellbeing. And then UCLA has an app you can download with free guided meditations, which are also excellent tools for helping reorient our brains away from the negativity bias and towards a positive, productive vision. Next slide, please. Okay. So sometimes the term fake it till you make it works. So you have fear and you have confidence. oftentimes when you're moving forward with your career, they're both very present. And so you step forward and you practice anyway. So here's one of our participants from our workshop. I am so grateful for one of the very first tips to speak positively with others about your journey. The more I say I'm excited for my next step, the more I actually believe it. This is such a simple but powerful change. And then, of course, we've got Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, stay afraid, but do it anyway. What is important is the action. And this is, again, make the plan, work the plan. Keep going forward with your action. Next slide. Last success factor, number 5. I'm going to briefly walk us through this. You're going to develop and share a narrative that communicates the field and the function you're exploring and moves you towards what you're moving towards with excitement. Okay, so the narrative is going to be very short, and it's very important because the stories we tell about ourselves shape how we see ourselves and how others perceive us. Briefly, I want to walk through the elements. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with a professional summary. The first thing you would say is, I am trained as an attorney. You want to like really lay a concrete foundation for the person. I have a background in fundraising. I studied psychology undergrad, like things you can tie, you know, the really root this, make it concrete. Then you want to introduce the transition. And I think you can actually move to the next slide, Jeff. You can introduce the transitional piece. The second part of the narrative, you can highlight the driver or the catalyst for your career pivot. So recently I've become very interested in, or an incident at work really opened my eyes to the importance of. So you show you're on the move, you show the pivot. Finally, focus on where you're moving toward. Okay, I'm a marketer interested in working in tech. The fourth piece is optional. And if you're speaking to someone, they're kind of rolling their eyes, looking at their phone, I would say ditch the fourth piece. But if they're looking engaged, you can say, gosh, do you happen to know anyone in the voting rights space or the decarbonization space or whatever your target industry or function is? And you don't say, who can help me get a job? You just say, who would be interesting to talk to? Okay, next slide, please. Excellent. So here is one sample, and she started her career as a journalist. That's kind of the grounding context setting part. Then we talk about this catalyst. I've moved into media relations, and then finally where she's going, exploring roles in the community. Next slide, please. Great. So a final note, at each juncture in your career, and as we progressed in this current century, people have many careers over a lifetime. Your goal is not to map out the next 5 or 10 years or to plan your entire career. That is nearly impossible in today's complex and ever-changing economy. Instead, your focus should be on identifying taking your best next step. This is the step that provides you with financial stability to pay your bills, allows you to enjoy your life, and aligns with work that matters to you and brings you fulfillment. By prioritizing the next step that meets your practical needs and personal values, you set yourself up for meaningful progress. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. I really am just delighted to have had the opportunity to be here with you all today. There's a number of ways I'd be delighted to have you stay in touch. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Please consider subscribing to my newsletter on bluebridgecoaching.com. I teach a monthly workshop that runs, it'll run every single month, and you all have a 50% discount for the next 3 months. So February, March, and April, come join, register. There's a code that we're going to get you. And basically you get to participate for 50% off the price, which is already quite a great price check out my website. And I am ready to take any questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Emily. Thanks. We in planning for today, you and I talked about just doing an overview of the deep work that you do, because each one of these 5 steps that you've covered could be its own hour or two as you dive deeper. And so the fact that you gave everybody this exposure to these various strategies and things that people need to consider is really valuable. So we do have a couple questions that came in, and this is a great reminder, folks. Please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. We talk so much about how important these like personal interactions are, and you got to build that positive attitude to have that impact on others. But Kimberly in the Q&A here has really pointed out that so much of like interacting with people has changed since COVID. There's so much less personal interactions that people are doing in workspaces or at all. And Kimberly is honest in saying that she's really avoiding those kinds of social interactions. And so you talked about, Dale Carnegie's book, which I'm certain I read at some point in my life, but I might need to go back and review it
A
again.
long time ago.
How do you, for somebody like Kimberly or anybody whose like level of comfort with social interactions has been changed in today's day and age of bird flu and H1N1 and COVID, where people are a little less inclined to put themselves in like a big networking event, as an example, what advice, how do you think Kimberly should approach things? And what does she have to consider in just making that decision?
This would be a great topic for a whole nother webinar, but I am really keen to help you think about this right now. This is such a fundamental question for everybody right now, because we all have changed our practices, our social practices since COVID. So I want to just emphasize that for well-being, just as humans, outside of the whole question of a job hunt, we need social connection. There is an epidemic of loneliness in the United States. So I would encourage you to really start to create connectivity. What does that look like for you? It's going to look different for everyone. So recent client I spoke with is quite isolated, and we happened to be talking, and he shared that he loves running. A running group is a fantastic way to drastically expand your network. You can run, you probably don't even have to talk that much. Just somewhere where there's lots of people you can show up and be part of the community. Another good example is a professional association. You go early, you volunteer to help. People will be so grateful to you. And you don't have to perform. You don't have to come away with lots of different numbers. Make it easy for yourself. Make it a practice of just showing up. Social connection is a predictor of longevity. It's a predictor of brain health. There's so many reasons to do it. And this is a great area. I think I should generate more content on this. It's such a good question. I hope that helps a bit.
I love that you started out with sort of helping people define their scope, and the idea of like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, don't waste your time chasing down industries that aren't offering the opportunities. And so Jeff had written in, and I think answered his own question, but the information you talked about with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, would you mind, just for folks that might have had a similar question about Jeff, can you tell a little bit more about how folks would utilize that specifically around the looking at similar fields and opportunities?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, you can go on, I use the example of a data analyst. You can go on, and there's actually, if you plug that in, you can find all sorts of relevant information. And I'm happy to include sort of the how-to and the follow-up, Jeff, if that's a good idea. But basically, you can plug in different types of positions and learn about them. They have resources at the ready. Then you can press, there's a button where you basically can explore different options. There's a lot of other tools as well that I share in our Tools for Transition workshop. I'm happy to email those to you. So whoever asked that can feel free to be in touch with me. Another tool that I didn't mention, but is becoming sort of career co-pilot is AI. So I can also share some, in the workshop, I share some guidance on how to use AI in the reflection phase. But AI can really help you think in a new way about your own career. If I'm interested in this, what other fields might I think about? It's quite a powerful tool. So I recommend checking that out as well.
You talked about the importance of having informational interviews and leveraging a network to make new connections to help do that research and help direct people in the kinds of transitions they want to make. Melissa is wondering, in terms of like reaching out to those connections, whether they, especially when
Yes.
they're not people you're already connected to, those second degree connections, third level connections as defined on LinkedIn. Do you think, reaching out specifically to somebody on their LinkedIn profile is better or worse than just like trying to find somebody's direct email and contacting them
Mhm.
that way? Um,
Yes. Uh, I think it's a great thing if you can find their emails. Hunter.io is a resource where you can literally plug in, if you know where they work, you can plug in their name. You don't have to pay to use it. Hunter.io. And oftentimes you can find somebody's professional email address. But it doesn't matter. Go with the LinkedIn. Either way is fine. I think what does matter is that you're asking for a very small ask. You're asking for 10 to 15 minutes of their time. You are making it clear that you're interested in learning, so you're in an informational gathering mode rather than I am looking for a job, which will make that person want to run away. It's too big an ask. So make it a small ask. You want to talk to them and learn about what they're doing. You're experiencing a potential pivot into this field and you're really trying to gather all the information you can. So I think make the ask easy. We've always said it's nice to send a little, in the old days, we'd bring a latte as a thank you when we met with someone, but now, an e-card for a $5 Starbucks is a nice touch, not required. Most people want to help others. Um, the lowest hanging fruit is going to other terriers because there is a particular affinity amongst, in this case, the BU alumni group. So there's more incentive for people to sort of feel like, okay, this person's, part of BU. I want to help them. So those are some thoughts.
and I have to take that opportunity for a shameless plug for BU Connects
Yeah,
again. I talked about it in my introduction a little, but the one of the great things about this online networking platform is we ask people to make specific indications about how they're willing to help somebody. So if that's meeting for coffee, having an informational interview, reviewing your resume, opening doors at their organization or workplace, you can actually see that listed on somebody's profile. So you know in advance that folks that you might want to connect with at a target organization or industry are very specifically saying, yes, I am willing to help strangers, but people from the BU community with X, Y, and Z. So Emily, a lot of folks are just using the chat and the Q&A just to write in with thanks. Folks saying it's an excellent use of their time today. Content was presented so well with humanity. I think that's actually one thing that's
great.
often lost in this process, right? But I agree. Um, what guidance, Nilufar, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, says, thanks for the great tips. They enjoyed the cartoons. What guidance would you give to someone who wants to transition from global health to domestic health? That doesn't seem like that big of a transition to me anyway.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. And basically what you're going to want to do is it's going to be focused on informational interviewing because you
Mhm.
want to extend tentacles into the sort of domestic health kind of landscape, the community health landscape. So you're going to focus on identifying target companies, target people, and really forging conversations. Again, information gathering mode. But all those skills, there's so much sort of innovation crossover between global health and domestic health that all your skills should be sort of at the ready for this pivot, this exciting pivot towards domestic.
Kelly's asked a great question here. She's actually interested in hearing more about your own experience with transition, Emily. You had this background in psychology and public health. Kelly also has a background in mental health counseling and behavioral medicine, which is in high demand, right? There's the opportunities are there in the industry, but there's this incredible level of exploitation and burnout. So Kelly's really struggling trying to navigate this transition in a field that is conflicting by nature. So Kelly really wants to support other people, but as you discussed, there's your income requirements, and are you setting yourself up for failure in an industry where you're experiencing lots of burnout? So that's a long way of saying, like, what was it, burnout that led you to transition in your own career, and what advice would you have for Kelly about that? It's a big
You
one.
know, we all bloom at different times. I think I'm a late bloomer, meaning that I've had wonderful professional experiences, but it was really in my work most recently at Boston College where I helped launch and run an academic program that allowed me to support professionals who were also students and teach those individuals and learn about their personal and professional challenges. So I got this sort of training on working so closely with people on what mattered in their lives. And so it was that one-on-one work that really was like a bell that went off for me in terms of sparking my own passion, my own, like, what really makes me feel alive and creative is supporting others in their lives. And so oftentimes you just keep on the track. I know in my early career days, my husband would say, you're earning your stripes, you're earning your stripes. So there's a lot of that. But then you have these moments where you get to learn something about yourself. You have a new experience and you say, that is something to dig into. That is something to follow. So, we all have different paths. They open up at different times, and sort of trust the process. And you never know where it's going to go.
Well, we have some other great questions that have come in that are, I would identify them as being sort of really specific to the individual that's asking. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
encourage everybody, Emily's shared her email address here on the screen. I'm going to include that in a follow-up email to everybody that registered, along with a copy of Emily's slide deck, which you had a lot of great links in there. So we'll make sure that people have
Right.
access to that. But Emily, I just, on behalf of the BU alumni community, you've done a tremendous service for our alumni, our students today, and I just really want to thank you for your time and what you've shared.
It has been a real pleasure, and I hope to come back and tell you about the rest of our key success factors.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
a lot
Jeff.
of
Thank you,
folks.
everybody.
Thank you. A lot of folks just putting in the chat that they really appreciate your time, Emily. And I want to
A
thank everybody
pleasure.
that joined us today, especially those of you that have donated to BU. We can't do this work without your support. I do want to mention we've got another webinar coming up on February 26th, and that's going to be called Climbing the Corporate Ladder, 4 Steps to Fast Track Your Promotion as a Woman Leader. You can sign up for that session now on our website, again at bu.edu/alumni. You can always keep an eye on the alumni events calendar for things coming up both online and in cities near you. We also send out a newsletter called The Edge to emails that announces other upcoming career resources and events. And of course, make sure you check out BU Connects. Thanks again, Emily. This was fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
Have a great day or a great evening, wherever you might be. Thanks, folks.